What is happening, everybody? It is Ryan here with RNG Products, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Make This. Today we're going to be making something that I've been needing to make for a very long time. Now, if any of you have spent a fair amount of time in your shop, you know that after every project you make, that scrap pile tends to get a little out of control. Well, me personally, I'm tired of tripping over my scrap pile. So today, we're gonna make something that's gonna solve that. Now, I've been wanting to make one of these projects for quite some time, but I just wasn't sure how to tackle it until I came across an excellent video covering this. So big thanks to Chris over at the channel Make Everything. He's got a free set of plans you can download off of his channel. And I'm also going to put a direct link to those downloads in the description below. And I'm also going to link his YouTube channel. So go check him out and subscribe. He's got excellent content. Now, one of the things that really stood out for me on this project, it was a cool concept. One sheet of plywood to make a storage bin. I really didn't need a full 8-foot length storage bin like I had seen. So when I saw his project, I said, that's it, that's perfect, that's the one I need to make. So if any of you have been considering making a project like this, let's recreate it, make it here in the workshop. So thanks again, Chris. And again, go check out Make Everything, guys. Let's make it.
First things first, let's manhandle this 3/4 inch 4x8 sheet. One thing that's worth mentioning, on these plans, Chris has labeled the pieces A, B, C, D, E, and F, and so on, and it's very important you just follow those order of operations. Make your first cut with A, then move on to B, and so forth. Now, one thing I really struggled with in my small shop was breaking down these large sheets of plywood. I recently picked up this Festool track saw, and I've been really impressed with it. Now, we all know Festool is very proud of their products, and if you can't afford the Festool, you have other options out there like the Makita and the DeWalt. And as you can see, this really makes breaking down a full sheet of plywood a breeze. Once I had my main pieces cut out, I went ahead and moved over to my workbench and made a few of these angle cuts, as you can see here. Don't forget to put a piece of donor wood under your workpiece so you don't cut into your work table. And from here on out, simply follow the instructions and finish making all your cuts. And as you can see, these track saws create a tremendous amount of dust. I really need to look into getting a dedicated shop vac for my Festool track saw. Once I had all my pieces cut, it was time to move on to assembly. There's many different ways you can tackle this, and since I've got this nice Craig Foreman, I decided to put a couple pocket holes right here. And since I have this nice Craig Foreman, I decided to go ahead and use a little wood glue and some 1¼ inch pocket hole screws. This really allowed me to take my time and get everything lined up nice and precisely. And just like Chris did in his video, you can use those 5-inch pieces of 3/4 ply to make some spacers and get your first sheet in there nice and square, and try to not spill glue all over the side of your pieces when you install this like I did here. Again, the pocket holes are optional. As you saw in his video, he just went ahead and screwed them right in from the side, and either way is fine. Just if you're going to use the pocket holes, pay attention to what side of the board you'll be putting the holes in so that you can actually get to it and assemble it. Now I know the woodworking community is totally divided on the use of pocket holes. Me personally, I love the pocket hole system, and prior to getting my Kreg Foreman, I used my Kreg K5 and it was a fantastic tool. However, if you do have the budget for a Foreman like this, I would highly recommend it. It really speeds up any project you're working on. Time to attach the center divider. Pretty self-explanatory. Find center and use a little pocket hole screws and wood glue. Now, as you can see, this little bastard was pretty tight, but nothing my BFH couldn't handle. And right here, I just decided to drill a couple pilot holes with a countersink and drop in a couple pocket hole screws just for some added strength. Moving on to the last 3 dividers, if you measure out about 9.5 inches from that inside edge, that's going to give you equal spacing for all 3 of these components. And back to the Kreg Foreman to get some more pocket holes. Now right here, you're gonna notice me stop and stare at this for a couple minutes and realize my mistake. I had cut my boards down to the 5-inch width, but I did not cut them for the length, and as you can see, that board was overhanging. So whenever you're working on a project and something doesn't just feel right, stop, take your time, double check your measurements, and look at the drawing again. So right back over to the miter saw, cut those down to length, and back to reinstalling. Now let's get this front panel installed. Take a little extra time and use your speed square to draw some guidelines on where to pilot hole. And you'll notice that I've also switched back over to a normal 1 5/8 screw. When I was attaching the center support sections, I kind of noticed that the pocket hole screws weren't really biting well enough. And again, don't be afraid to make adjustments or correct mistakes during the build process. And just for some added security, I repeated the process along the side of the scrap bin into the dividers as well. I also noticed I had a slight overhang on the front panel and I wanted it to fit perfectly flush, so I just grabbed a trim router with a flush trim bit and cleaned that up. On to the bottom and final piece. Simply using a little wood glue and some brad nails to hold this board in place. Simply flush it with the front of the scrap bin and you should have about 2 inches left over on each side and some extra material hanging off the back. Now remember, the brad nails are just to hold it in place, they're not for structural support. And once again, I'm taking a little extra time and using my T-square to make a grid on where to pilot hole and attach these wood screws. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably tend to overload things, and I knew that with a big scrap bin like this, I would probably get this thing pretty loaded up. So I went ahead and spent a little bit of extra money, and I bought the heavy-duty 4-inch swivel casters from Harbor Freight. They're about $4 a piece, and you can always get them when they go on sale as well. And just to make sure I didn't have any issues with these casters, I went a little overkill and used a number 14 by 1-inch hex head metal screw. I also made sure I picked up 4 swivel casters. I wanted this thing to be able to spin around and turn on a dime very easily.
Well guys, it's been fun, but unfortunately it's that time. We're nearing the end of this video. So again, wanted to give Chris over at Make Everything a big thank you for providing these free plans. Again, I have them linked down below in the description. And as you guys can see, this was a very basic build, a really neat concept using one sheet of plywood. And I really needed a scrap bin, so this worked out really good. Like I mentioned previously in the video, I went ahead and went with the cheaper grade plywood because I knew I was gonna be doing something a little different with mine. What I plan on doing is I just finished up a rustic, reclaimed, distressed, whatever you wanna call it. But I cut these 3.5 strips down of 1/8" ply, and I got a bunch of different colors here, as you can see. Some of them I've stained, some of them I've painted. So what I wanna do is I'm gonna go ahead and skin this with a bunch of different strips so I can just add some extra character. That's the really cool thing about making stuff in your shop. There's no right or wrong way to do it. As you can see, there's a couple different ways to tackle something like this, and you can put any type of finish you want on it. And as always guys, if you have not subscribed to the channel and you like this content, go ahead and subscribe right now. And for those of you that are subscribed and you do like this content, do me that big favor, hit that like button. It really helps us get these videos shared and promoted, which in turn is gonna allow us to keep producing this content for you. So if you really wanna see what this thing looks like totally completed, enjoy the rest of the video, and we'll catch you on the next one, guys.